realized that we were into something that was way beyond anything we had ever had to handle before.
I
was watching a man throw himself out. It was the 101st, 102nd floor.
There's a rag or something under the door. Okay, if you feel that your life is in danger, do what you must do.
People are counting on me to make decisions.
Building number 2 on the 97th floor, people travel.
It probably was the worst experience of my whole life.
He's on the 88th floor.
In February 1993, a terrorist bomb explodes in the basement of the World Trade Center.
The smoke quickly poured up through the skyscraper, trapping people in the upper floors of the 110-story building.
It's pretty smoky up there and even on the lower floors, so...
6 people die. It's a loud warning about just how vulnerable New York is. When Brooklyn-born Rudy Giuliani becomes mayor of New York in 1994, he takes on the biggest job in the city, and he knows the city itself is a target. 1.5 million people live on Manhattan alone, and it generates billions of dollars a year. New York City has a unique status. From the Bronx to Liberty Island, New York is full of high-value targets for terrorists. From the beginning, Mayor Giuliani is aware that New York needs special protection.
The possibility of a terrorist attack was something that was very, very real. We would frequently have information about arrests that were made of terrorists, and when they were arrested, even though they weren't in New York, other parts of the country, other parts of the world, they would have plans for the New York subways, for the bridges and tunnels, for the stock exchange. So in that sense, we had been planning for the kinds of terrorist attacks that would take place for 7 or 8 years.
Early on in his tenure as mayor, Giuliani decides to establish an office for emergency management.
A mayor's office of emergency management, and a much bigger one than we had in the past. More sophisticated one, because of a fear that we would be facing emergencies that we hadn't faced before. Sarin gas attacks, anthrax attacks, the new possibilities. I had 5 uncles who were police officers and 1 who was a firefighter. So I knew the rivalries they had about who could do it better. Part of the Office of Emergency Management, part of its function was really to try to get the police department and the fire department emergency response to work on the same page.
Many question the location, remembering the terrorist attacks of 1993. But by September 11, 2001, the Office of Emergency Management is in its new home, number 7 World Trade Center. In 2001, the World Trade Center complex is the jewel in the lower Manhattan skyline. The Twin Towers boast 110 stories and rise 1,350 feet. It's a clear, blue morning on September 11th. Usually by 8 a.m., the towers are nearly full. But September 11th is primary day, so many people stop off before work to vote. The most important question on the ballot: who will succeed Giuliani as mayor? After 8 years in office, sometimes popular, sometimes not, it's time to step down.
An exciting day in the city. Usually I began my day as mayor with an 8 o'clock meeting. Because it was primary day, and a lot of resources were going to be devoted to the primary, I decided not to have the meeting that morning. But we decided to have breakfast at the Peninsula Hotel, 55th Street, right off 5th Avenue. 7:45, 8 o'clock. All 3 of us were old friends, former colleagues together in the United States Attorney's Office. For me, it was kind of an interesting day because I was just beginning to think about leaving office and what I would do next. And at the very conclusion of the breakfast, a police officer, one of my security detail, walked over to Denny Young, my counsel, and whispered something in his ear. She walked away. He looked a little concerned, and he said, there's a big fire at the World Trade Center. Sounds like a twin-engine plane has crashed in to the North Tower. Looks like a really bad fire. We better get down there. A friend of mine, Bill Simon, he grabbed my hand, put his arm around me, and he said, "God bless you," which seemed a little odd. I mean, we have terrible emergencies in New York once a month. Airplane crashes, subway derailments, blackouts, hostage situations, you name it. I walked out of the Peninsula Hotel and I saw a beautiful blue sky. Perfect day.
This just in, you are looking at obviously a very disturbing live shot there. That is the World Trade Center, and we have unconfirmed reports this morning that a plane has crashed into one of the towers of the World Trade Center.
This cannot be an accident.
Is someone trapped on 104?
No plane would have gotten that far off course on a day like today and crashed into the Twin Towers. This must be some kind of a deliberate act.
Right here. I watched it. I seen it go. Wow. I heard the boom. I said, look at the smoke. As soon as it happened, I said, was it terrorists? I saw it was a red and white plane. It was so low this building.
Hundreds of innocent people instantly lose their lives, and those still inside the building are in a terrifying race against time.
We get information on our radio. Very bad fire, a lot of people trapped at the top.
We have about 6 persons on the 97th floor.
Okay, 106th floor. There's no injuries, but the people are trapped. They don't have no air.
We got it.
I have a theory about managing an emergency, which is you have to see it. It's one thing for somebody to describe something to you. It's another thing to actually see it.
In the days to come, many question Giuliani's decision to risk his life and the city's leadership at Ground Zero. The first decisions are made quickly in the car. Are the fire and police departments getting everything they need? Is the Office of Emergency Management in action? Who else needs to be informed?
I attempted to reach the governor's office in the White House. I could not get through.
The high volume of phone traffic immediately overloads the cell phone networks, and calls fail.
The cell phones were not working consistently. So I wanted to have a place where we had actual telephone lines so that we could get through, not just to the White House, but to the Defense Department, governor, wherever else we had to get through to get help and communicate.
Giuliani's vehicle cuts through the Manhattan traffic. Soon he's close enough to catch his first glimpse of the North Tower. It's 9 a.m., 14 minutes after the crash.
I was beginning to realize that this was worse than I had been told.
Heavy smoke. Okay, sir, please try to keep calm. We'll send somebody up there immediately. Hold on, stay on the line.
Got to St. Vincent's Hospital, which is on 6th Avenue in Greenwich Village. Doctors and nurses out on the street in their surgical gowns, like a hospital in a war zone, rather than something I'd ever seen in New York City.
New York's mayor has no idea his city is at the center of a new form of warfare. Seconds later, that changes.
Big explosion. I didn't know what it was.
At 9:03 a.m., United Airlines Flight 175 flies into the South Tower of the World Trade Center.
Within seconds, we received a call from the police department saying the second plane had hit. Once the second plane had hit, it was a terrorist attack, for sure.
And this new form of terrorism has already claimed countless innocent victims.
The first emotional feeling that we were in some kind of war.
On the ground, the situation is frenzied and many think the unthinkable. Those above the impact zones have little chance of escape.
Bang!
right into the middle of it, like around the 70th floor, and then half hour later we see the second one bang into it. There's no words to describe what's going on out there.
It seems inconceivable that anyone will be able to bring order to the chaos, but that is the task for Mayor Giuliani and New York's first responders. In the flood of evacuating civilians, Giuliani's team abandons their vehicle 3 blocks away from the World Trade Center.
It would have been impossible for me to make decisions about this if I hadn't seen it. I'd have made all the wrong decisions. Wouldn't have realized how vast it was, wouldn't have realized how many resources we need.
Building 2 World Trade Center. He's on the 97th floor with about 6 other persons.
It's immediately clear the mayor will have to make choices that could mean the difference between life and death for hundreds. But the strike on the South Tower has made it impossible to work in his Office of Emergency Management in World Trade Center 7. The decision to base it there has proved disastrous. Like the police, Giuliani needs to establish a new command post.
Police were taking over an office building to set up communication lines that would be hard lines.
It's not uncommon for the city's fire and police departments to have different command posts at an incident scene.
I said, well, let's go to the fire department command post, get the information, and then we'll come back here and we'll know exactly what to say and exactly what we need.
The FDNY establishes a post on West and Vesey. From here, they manage all their firefighters. Despite the danger, Giuliani needs to speak with the fire chiefs to get their advice. It's 9:10 a.m.
We then proceeded to walk 2.5 blocks toward the World Trade Center. Joe Loda, my deputy mayor, pointed to the top of the tower, and he said people are jumping out of the towers, and it's very dangerous down there. And I looked up, and all I saw was debris. I didn't see people.
What Giuliani sees shocks him to the core.
I guess I was hoping that he was exaggerating or that it wasn't correct. And that's when I paused. I was watching a man throw himself out of the 101st, 102nd floor, right near the top of the building. And I just watched him. It must have taken 3 seconds, 4 seconds, but I just, my emotions just completely changed. I felt all of a sudden we're into something we've never been into before. This is not just another emergency. This is way off the charts. But that was the moment at which I realized that we were into something that was way beyond anything we had ever had to handle before. We didn't have a plan for airplanes being used as missiles attacking our buildings. We're just going to have to do the best that we can.
Millions of people around the globe are transfixed by the sight of men and women choosing certain death rather than face the horrors inside the towers. For many, the sight of people jumping is the most shocking and terrifying sight they've ever witnessed. Giuliani forces himself to move on. Like the emergency responders, he has a job to do.
There wasn't time for fear. I don't know if I had had time to contemplate it, whether I would have been afraid but there was no time. I had approximately 3 or 4 seconds to contemplate what it meant for that man to be jumping out of the top of that building, and then I just had to move to the fire department command post to Chief Gansey.
Giuliani sees the fire department chaplain, Father Michael Judge, rushing toward the North Tower. Father Judge has helped Giuliani through some of the darkest moments in his personal life. It's clear the mayor and the fire department need his prayers now.
I put my hand out, I grabbed him, and I said to him, Father, we're going to pray for us. And he looked at me and he said, I always do. And I could see a tension on his face that I had never seen before.
Its attention echoed on the faces of the fire chiefs at their command post. With them at the helm, Giuliani knows the rescue operation will go as smoothly as possible. At 9:20 a.m., he reaches their post at West and Vesey.
My first thought was, can we get people up to help those people that were jumping out of the building? Can we get a helicopter up there? And the chief kind of grabbed my arm like that, and he said, I can't get my men above the fire. I can get everybody out below the fire, but there's no way I can get my men above the fire, and we can't put a helicopter up there.
Fire Chief Gansey tells Mayor Giuliani that those above the impact zone can't be rescued from the roofs.
That means those people up there are condemned to death.
World Trade Center on the 97th floor. Heavy smoke. Okay, sir, please try to keep calm.
That was a horrible feeling.
Heavy smoke. How many persons?
Just a horrible feeling.
Okay, we pull out to the fire department.
Something under the door there, so to stop the smoke from coming in. I'll pull right by the door. Don't break any of the windows.
Okay, if you feel that your life is in danger, do what you must do, okay?
I don't know that I ever even had enough time to think that. I felt that. I don't think I formulated in my brain those people are condemned to death.
Okay, right at this point, open the windows.
When you're going through something like this, you don't have a chance to stop and reflect on that. You just have to go on to the next decision. I just had to move up to the fire department command post to Chief Gansey.
Chief Gansey's request is simple. Get the streets open for emergency vehicles and have the police move people north, away from the buildings and falling debris. But the mayor is concerned that Chief Gansey isn't heeding his own advice.
I could see people getting hit with things coming from the building. I could also see that he was in an area that was somewhat dangerous because the things were coming perilously close to us. I said, is this the best position? He said, yes, and he showed me why.
Chief Gansey tells Giuliani this is the best place for a view of both burning buildings. Giuliani isn't sure, but accepts the decision.
I hugged Chief Gansey, wished him well. I walked north, block and a half, 2 blocks, to where the police department had set up its command post.
Mayor Giuliani's decision to allow 2 command posts has been the subject of much discussion in the aftermath of 9/11.
I believe there had to be 2 command centers. It would have been impossible for the police department to accomplish everything they had to accomplish outdoors. We had to have a command center indoors so that we could use hard lines. At this point, we were not just concerned about the World Trade Center. We were concerned about other attacks.
Some people believe that if he had left senior police figures with the fire chiefs or forced the FDNY to relocate to Barclay Street with him, he could have saved many firefighters' lives. They say that Giuliani's decision denied the fire chiefs information from NYPD pilots who suggested the towers were going to collapse. Although no such warning was given by the helicopter pilots before the collapse of the South Tower, at 10:08 a.m., an NYPD pilot reported that he did not believe the North Tower would last much longer. But Giuliani remains adamant that splitting the command posts was the right decision because the fire and police departments had different jobs.
There were 7 planes that weren't accounted for. So we didn't know how many of those 7 planes were still headed for New York. We were concerned that there would be an attack at the Empire State Building. There'd be an attack on the Statue of Liberty. There'd be an attack on the Stock Exchange. There'd be an attack on the subways. There'd be an attack on the bridges. You had to separate the response to the fire and the emergency at the site from the response for the entire city. Because the people dealing with the fire couldn't possibly deal with the protection of the rest of the city. And the people who were dealing with the protection of the rest of the city couldn't possibly deal with the fire.
9:45 a.m. Mayor Giuliani heads for the police command post at 75 Barclay Street. The journey takes less than 5 minutes. En route, decisions are made on closing the bridges, establishing security at New York's landmarks, and shutting the tunnels. Then Giuliani hears an incredible rumor.
Now we have unconfirmed reports there has been an explosion. There is a fire at the Pentagon here in Washington.
A huge fire has engulfed the Pentagon. And even more terrifying, a big chunk of the building has been destroyed.
On any other day, it would have seemed absurd, but not on 9/11.
Police department had now taken over this ground floor. It was a Merrill Lynch office, and they threw Merrill Lynch out.
Within minutes, it's functioning as the nerve center of the mayor's operations. An hour before, Giuliani had been breakfasting with friends. Now he's in a back office trying to contact the president to see if the United States is at war. At the White House, he reaches one of the president's assistants and asks if the rumors about more strikes are true.
At that point, I had heard the Sears Tower had been attacked. There were a lot of different rumors. I said, has the Pentagon been attacked? He said, affirmative. We're leaving the White House, and the vice president will call you back. My impression at that point was they were taking the president out of the White House, because I didn't know the president was in Florida.
In fact, the president is aboard Air Force One, and the vice president is entering a secure bunker. Unknown to Mayor Giuliani, these security actions are about to turn him into the public face of 9/11.
White House and Washington affairs. Claire, do we know where the president is at the moment?
Well, Peter, that's what we've been trying to figure out. I've been told by sources that Air Force One hasn't landed yet. In addition, the entire staff of the White House and the old executive office building, State Department has been scattered around town. There's very little information about how this government is running and from where it's being run.
Just before 10 a.m., a call comes through from the vice president.
I could hear a noise on the phone. I looked around, and I could see that the desk in front of me was shaking. I didn't know what that was.
It's 9:58 a.m.
People going under the desk. I heard the chief of the department yell, "The tower has come down. The tower has come down."
Inside Barclay Street, a police officer grabs Giuliani to protect him.
It looked like nuclear cloud, this like gray smoke coming toward the building. Things flying through the street, things hitting the side of the building, and then all of a sudden it became dark outside. It went totally dark outside.
Alright, Manhattan, Division 6 acting, K, urgent. Division 6 acting, go. Alright, you're responding down to the World Trade Center. You're to maintain radio communication and advise Manhattan dispatch what exactly is going on, K. We are unable to make any kind of communication.
It collapsed. The top floors collapsed down. I saw it blow and then ran like hell. Thank God. I'm 69, but I can still run. There's got to be firemen trapped back there, though.
When the chief said the tower came down, I didn't think he meant the entire Twin Tower. There are big radio towers on the top. And I thought those towers had come down and hit our building.
The 10-second collapse instantly kills hundreds of civilians and emergency personnel.
This loud thunder, we looked up and the top of half of the building was actually coming down like dominoes, and it just fell over to the left, and everybody started running. It was a nightmare. It was a nightmare.
Inside Barclay Street, concerns begin to mount about the building's stability. Giuliani knows that if Barclay Street collapses, it will take with it New York's mayor and key members of his staff who are needed to run the city.
We decided it would probably be best if we got out of the building.
The entire City Hall staff follows the mayor as he looks for an exit. But there's a problem.
Checked 2, maybe 3 exits, and they were all locked.
Things look desperate, and some members of his staff panic.
Hey, hold on, we got people in there, man. We can't go. We got people in there. We gotta get them out.
My father taught me when I was very young that if you're ever in an emergency, become calm, become the calmest person in the room, and if you do, you have the best chance of surviving. I don't know why he taught me that, but he did. We better go back upstairs and see if we can get out upstairs.
But they're still trapped. The mayor is running out of options. Then, 2 maintenance men appear.
We had just finished evacuating the building, made sure everybody was out. And I wanted to get my wallet and my keys, and when I ran down the stairwell and opened up the door, there's Rudy Giuliani and about 20 people, men and women, and they were visibly upset. I just looked at Giuliani, I said, "What are you doing here?"
The dust is starting to settle. Just tell them to go slow.
They said, we can take you out through 100 Church Street, downstairs.
If they can't get out of the building, there will be no way to communicate to the outside world.
Okay? Okay. Is everyone okay?
We decided to go back down the staircase, through the basement, down to another stairwell. I told Mr. Giuliani that, don't worry, stay calm, everybody stay calm. We'll get you up another stairwell.
We followed them along this underground hallway. We passed the exits that we couldn't get out. And they finally opened the door, and it opened. And you could hear like a sigh of relief. The people in back of me, you could hear a little.
Just before 10:15 a.m., New York's mayor emerges to fight for control of his city.
Let's talk a little later, okay?
Outside, debris has flown everywhere. Cars are on fire, and the streets are full of walking wounded. The iconic South Tower of the World Trade Center no longer exists. Giuliani knows it's dangerous in Lower Manhattan. He needs to tell the public to move north immediately.
People, let's move! Let's go!
Giuliani may still be alive and in charge, but at this moment, he's unable to function effectively as mayor. He's on foot on the streets. The mayor needs a command center. He urgently needs to speak to the White House and the governor.
We actually thought about a hotel on the way. It was a glass building.
Eventually, they decide the firehouse of Engine Company 24 and Ladder 5 at 6th and Houston will have the secure landlines they need. As they move north, Giuliani is sure the best thing he can do right now is lead by example.
I say we still go north.
But he quickly realizes that New Yorkers don't need to be told how to behave in an emergency.
The thing about New Yorkers that's wonderful is, if it's something small, you can have a lot of problems with them. If it's something big, New Yorkers know how to react to it. And they were reacting with a great deal of courage. Yes, they were moving away, but they weren't doing it in a way to harm anyone, hurt anyone, and they were stopping to help people. Right behind us was this cloud. It was really remarkable.
The mayor and his team take inspiration from the city's citizens.
The police commissioner and I saw this man who was having a hard time walking. He was injured. We stopped. We waited for a police car to come up, and he and I put him in the police car.
It's 10:28 a.m. The North Tower crumbles to the ground.
I hope I live. It's coming down on me. Here it comes.
All of a sudden, I got grabbed from behind, and I felt myself being pushed to run. I didn't know why I was running.
Giuliani realizes that if he's seen running with his security detail, it could cause panic and more people might be hurt. So he stops and turns to look downtown.
What I saw was this big cloud of smoke, like coming toward us.
The collapse of the North Tower kills nearly everyone still in the building, as well as many of the first responders gathered at its base. Chief Gansey is among the dead.
Just smoke! Don't get killed running! It's just smoke! Come on, it's just smoke!
Mayor Giuliani is nearly half a mile away, unaware of how devastating the second collapse has been. Coming 102 minutes after the initial strike, many hope that those inside and around it have been evacuated. Giuliani's team organizes the press for a news conference. Meanwhile, the mayor hits the phones to get the latest news.
I called Governor Pataki at the firehouse. He said, "We thought you were missing." And he said something that suggested he thought he would have to make decisions, without me. I was very relieved that I was okay. We both agreed that we would meet at the police academy, and I said, "I'll meet you there in a half hour."
Giuliani realizes that the people of New York don't know if he's dead or alive. Unsure if his initial press comments were broadcast, the mayor goes live on TV.
Just waiting for Mayor Giuliani to join us by telephone for an update. Yes, we are.
It was important to let the people of the city know that this was, to the extent that it could be, under control.
Well, the first thing I'd like to do is take this opportunity to tell everyone to remain calm.
That the fire department and the police department are doing everything they can to save as many lives as possible.
Here in Lower Manhattan, walk north and get above Canal.
And at least that to this point there were no further attacks.
Many police personnel and fire personnel.
And that everything was being done to protect them if there would be any further attacks.
We've been in contact with the White House and asked them to secure the space around.
The TV interview begins a little before 11 a.m., just over 2 hours after the worst terrorist attack in U.S. history.
Mayor Giuliani, do you have any sense of the magnitude of injuries and deaths?
Except to say that it's horrendous. I was down there and watched it and saw people.
Giuliani's message tells the people of New York that they still have a leader in place.
Situation, I think right now.
Perhaps more importantly, his words convey the shared pain that the American public feels.
Trying to bring some order to this. And then we've moved city government to the firehouse in Greenwich Village. That's where I'm operating from right now.
At the time he makes his first live broadcast, Giuliani is confident that many lives can be saved.
Within an hour, we decided we were going to have to work 24 hours until we got everyone out.
We need volunteers for first aid.
As a life-saving operation, we ordered the generators to light up Ground Zero.
It's only one of many decisions. Rooms are found for the residents of Lower Manhattan. Police are deployed to protect bridges and historic sites. Every doctor, nurse, and firefighter available is called in. Even the gas supply is turned off to prevent accidental explosions. and the man who has the last word on all the decisions is Mayor Giuliani.
I probably didn't have all the facts, so I would say a little prayer. After 3 or 4 decisions, I just close my eyes and say, "Dear God, make it right."
The president has been removed to a secure hiding place, so when the American public looks for an authority figure to carry them through this crisis, it's Mayor Rudolph W. Giuliani they see. Although the eyes of the nation are upon him, Giuliani's message is for the people of his city.
My heart goes out to all of the innocent victims of this horrible and vicious acts of terrorism. And I want the people of New York to be an example to the rest of the country and the rest of the world that terrorism can't stop us. I thought I was talking to the people of New York more than I thought I was talking to my constituents, the people of New York. American democracy is much stronger than vicious, cowardly terrorists, and we're going to overcome this. Don't think I realized until a day or two later that I was talking to the nation or the world, or that day I think I was focused pretty much on the people of New York. I don't think we yet know the pain that we're going to feel when we find out who we lost, but the thing we have to focus on now is getting the city through this and surviving and being stronger for it. I wanted to make sure I was communicating with them in an honest way, but in as sensitive a way as possible. My hearts go out to all of the people affected by this. They don't deserve this. These are innocent people. This is a horrible attack.
Those watching the mayor and relying on his leadership are unaware of how difficult it is for Giuliani to maintain such a show of strength. At the police academy, names of the dead start trickling in, and many of Giuliani's close friends are among them.
I got the first notification that Father Judge had been killed. That was a big shock for me, and a big loss for me, because he was the person I would have leaned on for advice and for help in trying to describe this to people. Then I found out about Chief Gansey and a whole group of other people. These were all people I relied on. These people were friends of mine. Normally, if I had been told that they were dead or killed, or it would have taken a while to just get your thoughts back together. But I would say to myself, I feel terrible, but I can't feel it right now. I've got to put that off until later, because people are counting on me to make decisions. Any time spent being emotional is time that will be taken away from making a good decision.
But there is one point late in the day when Giuliani is overcome. During one of the press conferences, a reporter asks Giuliani if he has heard about the phone call from Flight 77 when passenger Barbara Olson describes the terrorists' actions to her husband.
When you mentioned that, Ted Olson is a very close friend of mine, and I know Barbara. She's also a very close friend of mine, and I didn't know that she was on the plane. When I heard that Barbara had been killed, I stepped back a little because I was afraid I was going to cry. I think my personal reaction is about the people that I know, people that I know that died. I didn't want people to see me cry, and I didn't. I was able to hold it back, and then I went and continued the press conference. And then I went back to my office and I called Ted, who was the Solicitor General of the United States. I was in my office by myself, and then that was the first time I actually cried.
Giuliani knows that the death toll is likely to be very high. Early in the day, he was told the figure would be around 12,000 people. But he refused to announce this because he was worried about its impact on public morale. Instead, he visits the morgue to ask Dr. Charles Hirsch, New York's medical examiner, how they should prepare for the vast number of dead.
The question I had to ask him was how many body bags he thought we needed. But he said to me, people there have been pulverized. He said what the bodies were pulverized. And the way we'll be identifying most of these people are with little smudges and remains. And it'll have to be done with DNA. When you start talking to people, the families, asked them to bring in toothbrushes and other personal effects of their loved ones, because that's the way we'll be able to identify them.
Dr. Hirsch's chilling assessment convinces Giuliani he was right not to announce a figure. When Giuliani is asked again to give a death toll, he refuses.
The dimension will be very large. In terms of the people we're looking for, it's a couple of hundred firefighters and police officers, which is a staggering number. As far as the number of people in the building, that'll be in the thousands. But there's no way of knowing at this point, and we're going to keep praying and hoping that we save as many people as possible. I said it that way because I thought if I put out the number at that point, it'd be so shocking to people, it would be hard for them to get to sleep that night or even to, get over it for 2 or 3 days. Any of those numbers would just make people just not be able to deal with it.
As 9/11 draws to a close, the day that dawned so clear has turned into a hellish night. Thanks to Giuliani's decision-making and the help of thousands of Americans, there are enough lights, food, and workers to continue the search for anyone still trapped. Just after 11 p.m., the mayor returns one last time to the site we now know as Ground Zero.
And there was no reason to go back. I think I just couldn't leave. It probably was the worst experience of my whole life. Just walking through there at night. I was probably feeling the loss that I didn't feel all day. I probably was feeling that night. Just seeing it all gone.
Giuliani spends over an hour at the site. In the next few weeks, he guides New York back from the pain it's enduring, comforts the families of the dead, and attempts to help the living. Gradually, New York gets back on track. Now, nearly a decade later, the city is buzzing with life. And even the site of the Twin Towers is being reconstructed. But the memory of what happened on 9/11 has not been forgotten. The eternal flame keeps burning in Battery Park, and all those who experienced that day have been changed forever.
Oh, I guess I've been changed in all kinds of ways. I've been changed spiritually. I've got a much deeper belief in God, and I prayed numerous times for help, and I got it. I think I understand mortality better, much better than I did before, and how precious life is. And I've become convinced that you've got to deal with terrorism from strength, not weakness. New York City is a lot stronger than this, and we're going to overcome it, and the people of New York City are going to give an example of how you stand up to terrorism. You just don't be afraid, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
For Giuliani, praise for showing the terrorists that New York is stronger than their hatred should go to the first responders and civilians who selflessly gave their own lives, attempting to help others.
I became convinced that they defeated the terrorists. The terrorists were trying to do two things. They were trying to kill a lot of people, and they were trying to destroy our spirit. And the firefighters and the police officers who stood their ground and didn't run away and lost their lives saved our spirit. They demonstrated that America is just as strong as it was during the Second World War, just as strong as it was at Iwo Jima, just as strong as it was after Pearl Harbor. And they were the ones who took the brunt of that. And the least we can do is show them how much we love them and admire them.